ni bujo. Myeengun Henry deshkan zibi and donjiba Myeengun dodem. I always open the show with my introduction. My name is Myeengun, which translates to wolf from the Ojibwe language. Deshkan Zibi is my nation, where I come from, called Chippewas of the Thames, but we're changing it back to Deshkan Zibi. And then I'm a member of the Wolf Clan. So that's kind of our traditional way of opening when we greet each other. And today it's a special day. We are just coming off a very important day that Canada has recognized the residential school victims. And September 30th has been designated as a day to reflect, remember, and to honor those that had to endure what we now know is the residential schools in this country. Well over 100 years of practice and loss of language, culture, lives that took place during that era. And it was kind of interesting to me a few years ago. I got a chance to talk with my friend Elijah Harper, who really knew that there was some significance to our history. And he was significant in getting the Canada Day, or June 21st, recognized as Solidarity Day. And then we found out during that time that there were more significant days that had to be recognized. And so September 30th became one that would recognize these victims of residential school. And there were many different ceremonies and I guess activities happening around Canada. And here at the university, we've used that moment to remember the victims in our region, the Mount Elgin Residential School near London, and the Mohawk Institute, which is just outside of Brantford, Ontario, which is our closest residential schools. But with that thinking and knowledge about those schools, we wanted to add something that's a little bit more positive on that day. And the University of Waterloo has made major commitments to reconciliation, decolonization, and indigenization here at this university. And we held our fourth annual recommitment ceremony, which holds the university accountable for their ideas and thoughts to bring reconciliation to this university and help our students learn really what is the underlying effect of the hardship that Indigenous people faced. And as we progress now through the history and through the knowledge that we know today, we feel that it's beneficial for institutions in Canada in general to give some of their time, understand that this country was built on hardship and pain for Indigenous people. And as that is being performed on this day, we get a chance to reflect on that important era of this country, but also more so on a going forward understanding of what we can do together to make this country better by knowing our true history, by walking a path of reconciliation and allyship. We can actually live up to the original responsibilities through our treaties and our wampum belts that solidified our partnership in this country and the resources that are part of this country to be shared more evenly so that we can live a good standard of living. And to do this, it's to think about our future, to think about the next 7 generations to come, who, if we don't do something today, we'll probably see very similar statistics in the future of poverty, youth suicide, just the alienation of a First Nation on their own homeland, which is a crime in itself. And so I think this is why the day is so important. And we were able to even honor the University of Waterloo by presenting and initiating our new Eagle staff, which carries a significant role in leading the future. And the 13 eagle feathers that were placed on that staff represent the 13 moons. But there's so much theory and thought that goes into what Indigenous people do, and I think this is now coming to light, and I'm really happy that we're able to share at this moment a very important understanding of the future of Indigenous people in Canada's relationship. So I wanted to share that with you this morning because not everybody knows the history, and not everybody knows what the Orange Shirt Day represents and how important it is for everybody to understand that. Give special thanks to Phyllis Swabstat, who told her story about how her orange shirt was taken away at residential school. So that became kind of the symbol of Canada, to wear orange shirts on that day and to think about the experiences of those students that went there. So today, I have, like I said, another special day today. We have a very special guest on Nish Vibes today, and Hannah Neufeld is here today. She's going to give us a chance to hear who she is and her experiences here. And as you know, it's never scripted. We just kind of talk from the heart and have a conversation and see where that goes. So welcome to the show, Hannah.
Thanks so much for having me, Myeengun.
So happy to have you here. I've been thinking about you for a while and hoping you'd come with us and be on the show sometime. And here you are today. So I'm really glad.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here in this beautiful space.
When I first started here at the university, you were one of the first ones that I kind of knew that were here. You know, I was seeing what you're doing here, and when I started at the Faculty of Health, we were introduced to some of your programs and your garden projects that you're doing, and you know, so I really felt that was kind of like a comforting welcome to the university. So I appreciate you.
Thank you. That's really sweet to hear that. Yeah. It was. It's been a real pleasure to get to know you more as you've been here within the Faculty of Health, and I was just so excited to hear that you were coming here. I know that you've held so many different other roles at different institutions and within different communities. So I think it's a real privilege to have you here at the university.
Thank you. Appreciate that. But who is Hannah? Let's find out who Hannah is. Let's whatever you feel like sharing about who you are and your role here, and however you want to take this conversation.
Sure. Well, I guess I can start out with, more formally, my role here at the university. I'm an associate professor in the School of Public Health Sciences here within the Faculty of Health, and I hold the Canada Research Chair in Indigenous Health, Wellbeing and Food Environments. And so I started here at the University of Waterloo in 2019. And prior to that, I was at the University of Guelph as an assistant professor in applied human nutrition. So I've been in academia now, I guess, for 2015 is when I started at Guelph, and that's my academic role here. And personally, I'm originally I was born in Fort Erie, Ontario. I'm adopted. I was adopted as an infant and grew up close by here in Kitchener, Ontario, and on the Haldeman Tract. I grew up with two brothers here, and I've since reconnected with my birth families. My birth mom still lives in Fort Erie, Ontario, and my birth dad has lived in Northern Ontario for many years. In fact, he just got back from moose hunting. He moose hunts just north of Dryden, Ontario. And he sent me pictures last night, and he said it was too warm to see any moose, but they caught lots of fish. Okay. Yeah, and so I'm of mostly mixed European heritage, and I've been involved in the area of Indigenous health now for about 25 years, and I think that comes from just, I guess, when I have an undergrad in applied human nutrition. And when I finished that many years ago, several decades ago, I was interested in doing international work. And so I worked in northeastern Brazil for a year or so. Met my husband, and we moved together to Indonesia. We lived in Central Java, Indonesia for 3 years, where my oldest daughter was born there. And I guess just working within Indigenous communities in those regions really instilled the idea in me that there was more that I wanted to do in that area. And so at the time, this was in the late 90s, I was interested in coming back to Canada and going back to school and learning more about Indigenous health within Canada. And so there were very few options for that at the time. So I applied to the University of Manitoba and the University of Saskatchewan for their programs there, because those were really the only researchers at that time that were doing work in the area of Indigenous health, mostly in the north, I would say, like the northern regions of Manitoba and Saskatchewan. And so I was really pleased to be accepted into the program in community health sciences at the University of Manitoba at that time. So, but it was a tough transition. It was tough moving from Central Java, Indonesia, to Winnipeg. And
Yeah.
that first winter there is the first and only time I've ever had pneumonia.
Really?
Yeah. It was an extreme change in terms of climate. But I really enjoyed my time there. I ended up doing my master's there and continued on to do my PhD there in Winnipeg, and still have lots of connections there with communities there. We lived in the north end of Winnipeg for that time that we lived there, and so we're really close with many Indigenous communities, urban Indigenous community there in Winnipeg, and I think that's really spurred on my continued interest in working with urban Indigenous communities, because that's, to the present day, that's most of the work that I do is focused in that area in urban Indigenous health.
Wow. So much to unpack there. There's a lot of history and experiences there. Mm-hmm. And what caught my attention was your time in Brazil, like with the... when you live in different countries and you get a chance to know the Indigenous communities, you find a very close link to the lifestyle and, spirituality and thoughts that way. Did you find that where you've traveled, was there links to what the First Nation people here in Canada are similar to?
I think so. I think... because I don't think I really understood the true impacts at that time, like in the 90s, really the true impacts of a process of colonization in all of those regions of the world, like in northeastern Brazil, where poverty was just so rampant. But there were those knowledges there too, and I was really privileged to learn about some of the Indigenous medicines there. There was a workshop group that we had for women in the local community, where we'd bring them together and we'd ask them to bring, plants from their yard or plants from, wherever they were traveling that day from a field. And we had a knowledge holder there that would bring people together and say, oh, did you know you could make shampoo from these leaves or things like that. So that knowledge was there. But yet the communities, like my neighbors, were so disconnected from that. And I found that in Indonesia as well. And that, again, was, decades ago now. I think there's more of a resurgence, like there has been here, in terms of wanting to know histories, wanting to know about knowledge. But in Indonesia, too, just a lot of spiritual beliefs that were kind of lingering under the surface that, if you went out to community, if you went out to the villages, there were a lot of spiritual healers and people that healed in different ways that were really interesting to me, like healing through massage and things like that, there were still those things if you looked under the surface, but on the surface, people were living very much in, modern society.
Wow. What I always thought, when if we get a chance to meet people from those destinations, I think we'll find that unity and the strength that we're looking for today, and, kind of a broken society, when I think about how politics and climate change has devastated, many parts of the world. But I think going back to like what you've learned from your travels is there is an important factor of humanity, that lives in existence with this world that we live on. And that's what I noticed about people around the world, outside of the politics and outside of the issues that we face. There's something that was always there for us to recover from, and that's the earth that we live on. And it provides us with food and water and nourishment. And I think that, just guessing, but your relationship to the land, how your garden projects are going, and maybe that's something that, instilled within you, that purpose of maintaining those types of gardens. So is that kind of where it come from?
Yeah, I think so. And I think as I get older too, I think this sense of, and I guess I didn't mention in my introduction too, that I live on a small farm now, just northeast of Guelph Treaty 19 territory, and grow a lot of things, and have a lot of animals. And I think, for myself, like, and I don't know if this is just, from being adopted or, traveling around so much over the years, just having that sense of belonging and connection to land. I feel that myself, and I in the work that I do, trying to create space for people to grow things, to spend time on the land. I know it's so healing for me, that it's amazing to see that sense of belonging that starts to unfold, especially in youth, and bringing people, youth out to the land and getting them involved in the garden projects and other projects that we've been involved in through the Wisahkotewinowak collective, like developing an Indigenous food pantry recently over this past year, and having the youth directly involved in that and making decisions around that, and just, creating community.
Wow. So your adopted family were the urban family? I'm just trying to find the connection of you and the land. And they were. My birth dad, who lives close to Thessalon, Ontario now, he lives on about 7 acres, and he has his own big garden and taps his trees and things like that too. But he grew up in Fort Erie as well. He grew up in the city, and my mom did too. So I don't know where that comes from, because my parents that I grew up with too, they're both teachers, and we grew up in Kitchener, and I remember trying to grow things in the backyard when I was a kid, and with any real supervision or anything like that, because my parents didn't have that knowledge. So I don't know where it comes from, but it just gives me a real sense of, like I said before, peace and belonging and accomplishment, and just watching things grow and caring for them. And maybe it's because I'm a mom too. I'm a mom to 3 kids, and they're in their 20s now, and they're mostly out of the nest, and I think just that sense of caring, that sense of nurturing that I obviously feel so strongly, that I can that transfers to my plants and to my chickens and to my cats and things like that too. So I think it's kind of a spiritual thing, like when you think about, our natural gifts that we have. Elders in our communities would always say, strive to find what that naturalness of you are, because many people have various gifts, that they can bring to the earth, that I think Creator puts into our spirit as we, come to the earth. And we kind of search around and we find something that's comfortable, and we draw to those natural gifts that we have. So to me, I think that's, where that probably comes from in you, is something Creator wanted you to do while you're on this earth, and to show people, because now you're a teacher. Now you've come to be somebody who can lead, young minds, and if it kind of coincides with academia and also naturalness of the land, I think we've accomplished quite a bit there. So I don't know if that comes into your thoughts when you're teaching or not, but
no, and I really appreciate hearing that, because I remember having a conversation with Elder Mary Lou Smoke one time. She and her late husband were very much involved in the development of a course that I teach here at the university. And I remember, she's always beading, she's always doing things. And I remember saying to her one time, well, I'd love to learn how to bead one day. And I said, I don't know if I have the patience for it. And I had been telling her earlier on about preparing like warm oats for my chickens in the wintertime, to keep them warm. And she said, well, I think if you have the patience to make oats for your chickens in the morning, you'll be able to bead one day.
So I always had it.
Yeah.
And that's what I also reflect on, like your connection with people, with knowledge, like those beautiful people that you talked about. And others, and they're not all Indigenous, but people that just have that kind heart, warming feeling to learn from. And I really think that's what life is about. It's, the Indigenous community is strong and they still have a lot of their teachings. But if you look at all people in the world, if they bring that essence of careness, with them. And you can see it in their eyes. You can feel it in their words, in their heart. And you draw to them because I think that's where natural education comes from. You feel our ancestors around us, even though they're not in this world anymore. But they're still teaching us and they're still giving us knowledge. So I kind of think that's, if we kind of look at life more simplistic than, all the complications that we live through, that's really what the meaning of ceremony is. It's finding that peace someplace so that you can contribute to the society that you live in. And we still do many ceremonies in our communities, and I know many ceremonies across the world are very similar, ways of doing things. And I think if we draw to that, for our own healing and wellness, I think we can contribute more to society. So, but like when you talk about being on the land and planting and watching something grow, I guess if you've never done it before, it takes a little bit of understanding and patience. Yeah. Because patience, not all gardens work out and all seeds don't grow, right? So you can get a little frustrated by that. So do you go through those periods sometimes?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think it just makes that sense of accomplishment even more so. Like when you, it's not really overcoming something, but just learning, like constantly learning. Like, and I think that's, that's kind of what drew me all this time into, coming back to school. And I'm just like, I'm always in school now, but I just love that aspect of learning and learning from things around us too, not just in academia, but like this year I had a big success in my own garden because I've been trying to grow squash for years and years and years in the garden space that I have, and I'm very privileged to have such a amount of space where we live. And but I could never grow squash. I would always get squash bugs, and every year, and I tried moving it around to different spots in the garden. And so this spring, my husband built me this giant raised bed in a much different location than my regular vegetable garden. And I planted different kinds of squash seeds. One of them actually I found at the St. Jacob's Market this beautiful, it's a blue skin squash. I made it, I used the squash for a Christmas soup last year, and so I saved the seeds and planted some of those in this garden, and it just took off. It was just such a beautiful squash bed this year, and now you can see now that the squash vines are dying down, the beautiful squash that are there, heritage varieties. Other seeds that I get from a seed company in Fisher Branch, Manitoba, and just that sense of accomplishment and learning that that just wasn't the right place for the squash to grow, and we just had to find a new place for them.
I do hummingbird studies, and we got a chance to do pipe ceremonies at every location where we want to do pipe ceremonies, and something came out of that. This was on my reserve, and people that had hummingbird feeders would, allow us to come and check some of the hummingbirds that they had. And I would do a pipe ceremony, before we started the process, because we have to start with ceremony. And I found out that some of the lands that we live on, even we build our houses on, weren't always designated or designed for certain things. And when I looked at the history of people living in those areas, there was a lot of hardship and poverty sometimes in those locations. And I found out that, like, long time ago, our elders would pray for the land and they would ask the land for support for survival. But some of the lands weren't ever designated for certain things, like maybe the squash wasn't really designated in some of those locations. And then you found the spot, that was more, acceptable to that plant and that seed to grow. And I think this is where our issue, I think we have with understanding of land with the settlers who came here. Land became a commodity where, if I own it, I can do anything on that land. But where Indigenous concepts and theories are, land owns us, really, and allows us to do what is necessary. And we learn how to respect that, so it doesn't become an ownership or I'm going to tell that land what I want to do on it. I want to build a building on it, because those houses that were built weren't necessarily meant to be on that land because there was other purposes.
Yeah.
So if we can kind of understand that with land, I think, in our gardens and I think for you, the teaching part of it was to try different locations until you found the right spot and those seeds were happy then.
Yeah, and to listen to the land, to listen to the land and to learn more what the land, what you can do for the land instead of what the land can do for you.
Absolutely. And if we look at land as the term is Mother Earth, and we say Mashkode Wishk in our language, it's like the sage and cedars that we grow on it. Mazakmekwe is our Mother Earth, and we think about how the respect of that land that we live on can guide us to a very beautiful future. We can grow our food on it. We can build our homes, and we can drink the water from it. So I appreciate you, moving to a spot where you can actually do all those things. Because in the urban settings, you have these little post stamp, properties
spots,
where you just can't do all those things. And then even the organic, ness is infected, by the pollution in the air. So even if you're not using chemicals or different, substances on your land, it's still affected by the land that we, are occupied under. So
it's true, and I think for Indigenous people in the city, I think that's a real limitation to their wellness, right? Like I feel so privileged to have those spaces that I have self-determination over, but Indigenous people in the city very rarely have that, and that's a huge piece of their wellness, I think. So
how did you want to bring that here, at the University of Waterloo? You have a project that you built on the land in your garden, and I want to let you know that we've been given the land over there now. So, it's going to grow to an Indigenous, we have a vision, even together we have a vision what that land can do. And I think this has now been solidified to the university.
That's great to hear.
So that's all going to come out soon. So we're going to be working on this land together and doing some things that I think is so impressive. So tell me about your project that you built over in Columbia Lake.
Yeah, so it's kind of been a long time coming. So the Wisahkotewinowak collective really kind of just started as a grassroots movement in 2017, I think, with just a few of us locally. It was when I was still at the University of Guelph, and at the time we were just looking for spaces to grow things and to be able to bring members of the Indigenous community together and learn from the land together. And so it started with being able to access some land at Steckley Heritage Farm in South Kitchener, and where the collective still grows a number of things. And I think it was in 2017 we were able to access some of the land. There was a community garden space near Columbia Lake on the North Campus here, and so we were able to take up part of that space. And it's been a wonderful space out there, as you know. I think I can't remember when it was now. It was a few summers ago that we invited you and Jean out to that space to introduce it to you, because you'd never been out there before. And it's the garden space is beautiful. It's really kind of tucked away in between the lake and the forest there. And we've been really privileged to be out there and lead some programming out there. We've had summer youth as part of the Canadian Summer Jobs programs, working out there, learning from the land, learning how to grow things sometimes for the very first time, which has been wonderful to see, and supporting each other and developing community out there. And we've really tried to, as part of, we had a grant a couple of years ago to try and promote that space as something that hopefully, and hopefully this will happen in the future more formally, but so the university can, have a space to have an education programming out there on the land and have a land-based learning space out there. So we had seasonal activities, and I know you participated in some of them as well, where we had knowledge holders come to the space, invited community, the Indigenous community on campus, but also the local Indigenous community, members of the local Indigenous community out there to celebrate the space and across the 4 seasons. And so we've written up a report, and we're I know that's led to a course that's being
Yes.
led out there right now, and I know you've participated in that as well. And so it's wonderful to see that happening, and I look forward to the next stages of just working together in that space, because I really see so many possibilities.
Absolutely. And you just kind of shown how a seed would work. You get an idea, you put it into the ground, and you water it and nourish it, and sometimes you don't grow very quick, but now this is kind of built up to this point. And the vision that we've passed to the university has been tremendously supported. So we're even thinking about Columbia Lake, a name change, just because we don't want to keep it to a Columbus kind of a designation.
Yeah, association, yeah.
So,
That's
we got
great.
some talk. We'll share these, conversations about what it could be called and, honor it in that manner. So lots of big changes, I think, at the university with theory coming in. And you've been watching it, as we not push. I think it was just guiding the university along.
Encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you push, that doesn't always work. So you kind of just have to pull that same type of want that they have in them anyway. And if you can kind of say that education in this form is so natural, and I think this is what we can do to move forward as a society.
Yeah, and it's been wonderful to hear about the impact of the students. I was talking to the TA for the course yesterday, and the instructor for the land-based course, and it just seems like the students are just loving the content and being out in the space there. And I just know that there's even more possibilities. There's the instructor and I were working on, there were some funds left over from that original grant that we've tried to repurpose to be able to buy some things to use for the course out there, some like a fire space, and some hopefully to extend the seasons too, and some shelter spaces that are removable.
Oh, that's good. That's good. It's all working together and trying to get this all. We'll have difference of opinion, on different things out there, and that's kind of natural for people. But I think in general, if we look at it, from the perspective of learning, and if the university's made a commitment to indigenization, we have to do these type of projects. We will have a new president coming at the university, and it's always, that's our challenge always, making sure that we stay committed to these important developments. So we're hoping that the new president will kind of have the same encouragement, that our current president has. And so it's kind of like, it's a little hard sometimes because you have to re-educate people, where we come from. And First Nation communities have been kind of keeping this alive for a long time within their communities, but when you have a new prime minister or president, you kind of have to guide them along again. So process slows down a little bit, and I really appreciate our current president, who right off the bat, took on the responsibility of reconciliation and did all he could. Now you see the walkway, which has been termed, the
2-row path.
The 2-row path now.
Yeah.
I'd like to honor Elder Bill, for getting those things going, and we have the student gathering space out there now, and the logos in the athletics departments, and Savannah, what she's doing over in different parts of the university. So just in your time here, I think you've probably seen some big changes.
So many changes. Because I started here just before the pandemic. I started in the fall of 2019, and then I think Jean Becker joined that January. And so I think that time with the pandemic too, it was so hard to build any momentum, and people just couldn't come together during that time. So they're really starting from scratch in a number of different ways. So but I was noticing during the ceremony on Tuesday too, and the fact that Jean is going to be retiring, and we're going to be having a new president, and just lots of changes going on at the same time. So I just remember having that thought and thinking, well, I'm hopeful that some of this momentum that has been built will continue in a good way.
Well, it's a foundation. If you grow a good, strong foundation, like we'll have our turns and changes, but I think overall, I think it's now a part of this university that Indigenous knowledge is very valuable and a big part of the university, and it's starting to work out because we've been approached by First Nation communities. We've made a MOU with the Chippewas of the Thames First Nation now.
Yeah.
And so our chief was here, and we had this ceremony to how can we help with some of the issues that happen on First Nations, like housing, infrastructure issues, learning about AI, all the new developments that's happening. How do we bring our First Nation communities to learn some of the, things that universities can share, And we've worked with Six Nations and Mississaugas of the Credit. They get free tuition now. If they live on this
amazing.
Land.
Yeah.
So I think this is why, progressively, I think the university. I feel really good that they're thinking this way and trying to support that. Because the interesting thing about this university, it's not really close to a First Nation like Western is close to the Three Nations there, and other universities are closer, so that's a natural relationship. But we're kind of distant from those. But we want to reach out now and find how we can make that path.
Yeah, which is complicated, working within an institution.
It is. We have our own issues, financial and other issues that we face, but to be able to want to reach out, and make this, that's why I think the ceremony has such a significance factor to it, because we can do this and forget about it after a couple of years, okay, we did that, now where are we at? But every year we have to kind of remind everybody, what our purpose was.
Yeah.
And so we don't fade away too, quickly, and we bring everything back. So. Yeah,
no, it's true, and I think it was great to see on Tuesday just the amount of support, the number of people that came out, and the size of the round dance, the size of the circle.
Yes.
that we had, because it's been 10 years now since the TRC was released, and like a lot of things, sometimes things fade into the background, like the Royal Commission. I think you were talking about this on Tuesday too. That was released in the early 2000s.
Yes.
And so many of the same recommendations. I remember when I was first starting school at the University of Manitoba, and those were Bibles, for those of us that were working in Indigenous health or trying to learn. And they've sort of faded away into memory, and I hope that this continues, and it was promising to see, like in the news too, like all the different events across Canada.
Exactly. That was great. So you touched on something too, like all this in health, like what you teach in health here. Do you find a correlation to all that? Like, how do our students see that? Like in your view, how are students accepting that?
That's an interesting question, because I know when. So when I was at the University of Guelph before, and I was in a professional program, so applied human nutrition, so teaching future dietitians and future nutrition professionals, and but also housed within it was the Department of Family Relations and Applied Nutrition. So we had family studies in there. It was originally like a home economics type department. And so I know at the time, bringing in Indigenous health, Indigenous nutrition, Indigenous food knowledge, those kinds of things into the courses that I taught there, because I taught a lot there. I taught 4 courses a year. Was sort of, I noticed, students were a bit apprehensive, or I'd have knowledge holders come into class and guest speakers and things like that. And there was an apprehension then. So this was in, 2016, 2017. Just right after the TRC calls had been released, just to engage with that content. Like I noticed that, I thought, oh, wow, this is a really great guest speaker. Like, why aren't the students in the class, small classes too, I taught grad classes, why aren't they engaging with this person? And I really noticed like kind of a reluctance or a shyness or just maybe it was just even a lack of knowledge or just not sure what questions to ask or how to engage. And I've really seen that change since I've come here. And I know it's a slightly different discipline, and I don't teach as much here. I don't have as much interaction with undergrads, but I really notice, I guess, more of a willingness and an interest to engage in these issues, which I think is wonderful. That I've really seen that change.
I think this generation, maybe from the past generation, there was some alienation from First Nation perspectives, and I think the 215 children that were found in BC that sparked interest in Canada has now entered our youth's mind. What happened to this country? What did we do? Why aren't we knowing about it? Because previous generations all say the same thing. Like, I wasn't aware. No, they didn't teach me anything about this. And this one is kind of changing. So I'm kind of seeing that thought in their mind. Let's get this out in the open. Let's talk about it and see if we can make some changes.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Because I remember when they had, that was in the news, and there was an event. I went to London actually for an event, a march, and I just remember, trying to find parking and, joining everyone in their orange shirts. And I'd never seen such a sea of solidarity before for these issues. And I remember tearing up. I was with my daughter, came with me, and it was so amazing to see that show of support.
It is. And, we still have a struggle because in my lifetime, I've watched our issues and thoughts being raised for a while, and then like when the TRC came out, everybody was looking at it, and then we go to this roller coaster kind of procedure, and then we drop down and nobody listens to us again, and another, usually it's a tragedy or something like that brings the tension back again. So I've been on this roller coaster pretty much all my life and watching it, but I think it's starting to connect now. Like we were saying with the youth, they captured that part, and now they want to just don't let it fade now, and make it work. So we all have to be participants in that. It's the way of the politics is today. It's capturing our attention, but we still have this issue we need to deal with. And then I think about the prophecies that we've had in our cultures, about how we need to use technology but not forget about the land itself. And if you ever heard of the 8 Fire before prophecy, it alludes to that. If we go one way in technology world, we forget about our natural existence here and the land that supports us for life. And so we got to be, I think Indigenous people around the world will always be the ones who remind us about those things. And when you have an Indigenous student in your class who's been kind of going to ceremonies and things like that, well, question teachers today. You're telling me this, but how can this part of it, be included? So I really feel good about our Indigenous students that, are now going to ceremonies, because they just don't take what the teachers say. They'll challenge it now.
No, and it's wonderful. And to see those supports in place for Indigenous students. Like it's wonderful that we have free tuition for students here now at the university, but it's not just about recruiting and having more Indigenous students in places. It's about supporting them and mentoring them and making sure that they feel safe in those environments. And the fact that they're speaking up is a great indication of that.
Yeah, I really like that too. So you've been here for a few years now. You got some plans going forward. You're going to kind of do some new things, or what's in your agenda for?
Yeah, well, I'm hoping so. Like, this is my research semester, so I don't teach this term, and so I have some grant writing ahead. I've already submitted one grant in September. That's really focusing on decolonizing dietetics and nutrition education, and focusing on incorporating stories that are taking place around food in urban Indigenous communities within Southern Ontario, and developing resources around that to promote nutrition education in a good way, and changing some things that have been done in the past. So that one's in, and then I'm at the stage where I'm in starting the process of renewing my research chair for the next 5 years. So it's a time of introspection now, and thinking about, what I've done in the past 5 years, what I want to do in the next 5 years, and I've been really privileged to develop a partnership with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, and we've sort of developed a sort of an informal network, working with different groups, not just within Canada, but also in the United States, that are doing food work within cities. And so I'd really I'm working on a grant right now to support that network, and to bring more people to that network to learn from each other, and to learn about funding opportunities and just ways of supporting each other, and documenting that work. So I think in the future, developing, I still very much work locally with local communities here, but just working on, in the next 5 years, before I retire, expanding that reach a little bit more, and extending that support.
Excellent. No, thank you for all that. It's great to have you here and learn about what you're doing and who you are as a person, and walking this path of reconciliation together at this university. So,
thank you, Myeengun.
Yeah, it was really, really wonderful. So, I want to thank you for joining us today and being a part of Nish Vibes, and learning more about Hannah, who you are, and the great work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here and to chat with you, and to spend some time in this space. Thank you so much.
I got a little bit of sage for you.
Oh, thank you.
There's a little bit of medicine that you can have for your ceremonies.
Thank
and
you so much.
Coming to join us today and being a part of this segment of Nish Vibes. So any final comments that you'd like to share?
Just that I think this is a wonderful way of showcasing some of the people that at the university that you interact with, and also just being able to interact with you, and to get to know you a little bit better, and the work that you're promoting. And I hope we have you here at Waterloo for a very long time to come.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. So thank you, listeners. It's always a pleasure to have people like Hannah come in and share, because we work in a big university, and there's so many good people here. Just recently I was gifted a bag, I can say, and she didn't know what was in it. She said her husband had this bag in the basement, and he died a long time ago, and she said she's been holding it for a long time, and she went through it a little bit, and they were just like stones and stuff like that, so she didn't really know what they were. So she said, for some reason I was drawn to give you this bag, and it's been in my basement for like 25 years, and so I accepted. I didn't know really what it was, and opened it when I got home, and it was like maybe 200 arrowheads that were beautiful shape.
Wow.
And these pipes that people used to use for ceremony, and they were not totally intact, but they were well intact compared to some of the ones you see at the museums. And I even had a bag of teeth, which was kind of weird, I guess, in a sense. But
human teeth?
Yeah, human teeth.
Oh, wow.
And so I got a chance to meet Chris Watt, who's an archaeologist here at the university. And I said, can you look at these and see what you think? And yeah, he took them, and he gave me a call later. He said, some of these things are like 12,000 years old. Did you know that? he said right after the ice age in this region, the indigenous people started making, points for hunting. And he said these are really from that period. So very significant find.
No kidding. Wow. That's incredible.
Very incredible. So the teeth, we're going to get them analyzed and see what they are, and I'll give them back to where they need to go if they need to be in a museum or something, of that significance. We'll determine that. But what a gift, to hold something that was created that long ago and used for, survival in those days. So, these kind of things are, to me, it kind of helps me. If you hold something like that, and I got a chance to hold bones of people from that era too, and it's almost like they pass messages spiritually to you when you got them in your hand, and that they lived in a certain way, and they want to make sure that that's kept intact. So it was such an honor to receive these, and I'll learn more about them as we go. So
I look forward to hearing more. That sounds so interesting. And they're from this region, like they were.
Yes, yeah.
Wow.
Well, some things were even. We found a piece of copper, which is a spiritual mineral that comes from like the Sault Ste. Marie area. But like we drink out of copper cups because there's a nutrient in there that we can use in our bodies. And we have a lot of stories about copper, in our history. So one of those pieces were copper from that region. So he was able to determine, that it's a very spiritual piece. So
wow.
So these are exciting things. And to work at a hospital where you have professionals, it's nice to be able to build friendships and they can support you on things like this. So. So I'll give you more information about that when we find it.
Yeah, please do. That sounds really interesting.
Looking forward to learn more about those. And so anyway, we're going to close off the show today. And thank you for your time and energy coming into the show. I'd like to always thank our technician today for all the hard work putting this all together for us. And we'll be back for another version of Nish Vibes. We're bringing on another gentleman from the university at our next segment. But I'll let you know that at the time we do. So with that said, Bama Pi Minwa in our language, that means we'll see you again, and hopefully everything works out good for you and you're coming into the winter season, the fall season. Enjoy the beautiful leaves and change of weather and all the beautiful things that happen this time of year. With that said, Bama Pi Minwa, everybody. We'll see you again at the next version of Nish Vibes.